The Softears Volume S. Let's talk about it. Now, there's been some debate on the driver count of this, but we're going to call it a 2-dynamic driver with a passive radiator and 2-balance armature set that costs around $320. This is not a sample. I actually have a few samples I probably should get to and review, but this is a little bit more exciting. I've had it in home for longer, so I'm a little bit more ready for those reviews. So this is a purchase unit. I did get a slight discount, but it is a purchase unit. Let's start by talking about the build quality of this IEM. All right, we have the Alfu Magic 1, which I often use in a lot of my comparison videos. You'll notice that it is a little bit of a wider shell, which, some people might have an issue with, which I personally don't have a problem with the width of this shell. But if you're used to really small shells, this probably won't work for you. The material of this is like a hard plastic, so it's kind of interesting. I like it though. It feels exceedingly durable, and it's nice feeling. I haven't lost any ear tips on it, which is great. There is a module in the front where you can change about the impedance. We'll talk about that when we get to the graphs. It's just an overall well-made IEM shell. Nice right and left connections where you can visually see. It's easy to tell which side's which. I don't particularly like this cable. Its chin slider does stay in place. It is clear, but it does have a chin slider for those that want it. Its Y-split does have a Volume S kind of label on it, which is great. The termination is able to change it out. It does come with a 3.5 and a 4.4 for those that need to change that out. This is a well-made connector where you just kind of have to pull it apart, match up 2 little pieces, and then twist and turn it back on. So as far as cables go, this is a nice, well-made cable, but not for me. The case is fantastic. It feels like a pleather. I like the feel of the inside. It's a good size. It's maybe not pocketable, but it feels right. Now, this is the case of the Elysian Acoustics Labs Annihilator. You'll notice like it's almost pure felt versus kind of a pleathery set. Time and durability will kind of, maybe determine whether this is a good case or not, but you can tell it's just a little bit bigger, which is a good thing because sometimes it's nice to have just a little bit more size to fit in some tips, maybe a second cable, maybe a second IEM. But it's a nice overall case with a satisfying zipper and a nice little logo branding Softears on the front. Accessories. We have 2 sets of ear tips. We have our 3.5 here. We also have some IEM booties for those that need them. And that's not it. You have more. You have a cleaning brush, a little ID card, a booklet, and a little nozzle tuner if you want to change the impedance on it. Let's talk sound. I'm American. In America, in a lot of sports, we kind of have this saying, he's him, this is it, kind of a thing. Meaning that like this is the one who's dominant and who's the one to come. It's hard to explain how clean this is to my ears versus a lot of other sets that I've got to listen to. It competes with the big boys, and the hype around this set, I will say that it is true. There are some faults, and I can see a lot of people not liking this set, but overall the bass is satisfying and visceral. It states my needs for bass. It's excellent overall quality. And it's a set that I'm going to end up keeping. Like, for example, I recently reviewed the Tangzhou Empress. I got that set, reviewed it, and I actually had it sold before I even put my video up of it. It just wasn't that great of a set. Very bright. Not something I would ever want to listen to or ever use as a comparison, and not something I would ever reach for in my collection, but I could see how some people might like it as is unique. This is different. This is a very good set, and I am thoroughly enamored with it. Let's start talking about some graphs, and then we'll kind of go from there. Okay, let's look at some graphs and talk about this particular IEM. You'll notice it has nice kind of peaky upper mids right here, kind of a nice dip from this 5 to 6K region. The treble feels like, it looks like it rolls off on the graph. I didn't really notice it. It feels sufficient enough for me, and I didn't have any problems with the treble or upper air on this graph or IEM. The bass does look a little bit light. So this is 100% not a bass head set. It is a mid-focus set with great upper air and detail. It sounds flat, but not dull or boring by any means. It's kind of interesting. Like the technicalities on this set are extremely well for this price, and it does sound and feel really good in ear. I wanted to show you there are two different impedances of this. I did try it briefly, but the thing about this is that the high impedance on this, so it means it's going to be sensitive to some sources and impedance adapters. I would highly suggest that you guys be careful what kind of sources you use with this if you are sensitive to this upper treble. And that kind of problem, my fault of this IEM that I want to say is that I feel like this switch would have been such a win to be able to do, instead of having this treble get spiky, is have that be flat, but maybe bring up the bass a little bit more. This is Mark from Super Review's graph. He's graphed both the low and high impedance of this. So kind of what I would recommend is having an impedance that can just kind of bring up the bass just a tiny bit, bring up the bass just a few decibels. I have, this is what a frequency of 25, a gain of 8, and a Q of 0.5. So just kind of lifting up this little region just enough. But the lower mid-range and mid-bass region are actually quite nice in this set. Even though it doesn't have a thunderous amount of sub-bass, it still does sound really nice in ear. But one of my biggest complaints, and I've heard other people say this too, and this is how I feel, is that this set, I feel like if you want to give it an impedance switch, give us the Volume S, but then give us a bassy version, which just lifts that up just a little bit, and it would sell even more. It would be amazing, and you would appease the bass heads and the neutral heads at the same time. That's kind of what I would recommend people to do if you could ever pull something like that off, of getting these two profiles. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to compare this to some other Softears sets, like the Studio 4. I like the Studio 4. The shell and the feeling of the Volume S in ear is much better. I feel like the bass and the dynamics becomes from the passive radiator in the Volume S are better. It's just a nice clean set that has good detail and air. Not to take anything away from the Studio 4. The Studio 4 is a fine set, and it probably doesn't necessitate a true upgrade. But for me, for comfort and a bit in sound, it is a better set for me, at least. The OG Volume. A lot of people like this set. To me, is a little bit brighter. This set's a little bit less here. I mean, I like the original Volume. I thought it was okay. I just didn't get the appeal to it. But I mean, it's also not a bad set by any means. It's just, it didn't really, like in ear, it didn't really excite me or engage me to a point where I thought, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Softears has a lot of other sets, and they do kind of have a house sound. This has a lot in similar with the Twilight. I think they trade blows. I really, really do. And I think, sometimes you put an IEM in ear and it just kind of excites you. And the Volume S to me is one of those IEMs that kind of does that. It's really exciting. It's really fun. It's really interesting. And the Twilight also has the same thing, but it's even a more comfortable shell for me. The shell in the Twilight's kind of weird, but the Twilight is, to me, an S. It's a very good IEM. It's really engaging. It's really fun. The Volume S, I think it competes. Another one, the RSV. The RSV does sound really, really good. I do think there's some minor faults with the RSV, like it lacks like that lower emph and dynamics, whereas like the Volume S, even though it doesn't measure like it does feel really impactful in the low end, and I do think it's a good set to love and enjoy. I'm going to show you some other sets around this price point. It's kind of hard because like at this price point, there's not a ton exactly at here, so sometimes we have to go up a little bit more and down a little bit more. But one to look at is the Binary Dyna Quattro. Now, The mids and highs, I think, the mids and highs are a little bit crispier and cleaner. Like the technicalities, if you want to call them, are better on the Volume S. I mean, the Dynaquattro has more bass, but they both, the reason I'm really showing this is they both have that passive dynamic radiator. But for me, the upgrade on the Volume S is there, but if you are a bass head and if it's going to annoy you not to have bass, here's a pretty good option that also has a passive radiator that also does some things pretty well for a reasonable price for those that might want it. Another one to look at for if you just don't have any money is like the Dunu Kima 2. I like the Dunu Kima 2. It's a smooth little dynamic driver. Not too exciting, but it sounds good in ear. It feels impactful. It has a nice warmth and kind of that lower mid-range, and it's something that I can recommend. All right, let's look at the Kiwi Ears 4 and kind of how they differ. The Kiwis 4 does have a little bit more bass, but it does have kind of an exaggerated amount of treble, which doesn't make it feel as contrasty, and it feels like it's just almost too much, almost like a light hissing noise or a tapping noise might cause. And so I feel like, I don't know, the upper treble in the Key 4 is a little bit dull and boring to my take. If we look at, say, so there are certain things about the Volume S, and like the Volume S just sounds a lot better. Like the FR is hard to describe, but you'll notice the Volume S does have a little bit more of this 1K region here. And it's a little bit of a different tune. Now, these are both good IEMs. The KE4 is a reasonable competitive set, but I think, if you look at the Volume S, it's kind of like a little bit like the new meta tuning, a little bit, and it's just kind of something to note of what a lot of people may like. This is a comparison a lot of people ask me to make, the awful Performer 7. Now, I like the Performer 7. It has satisfying bass, has non-shouty mids, has kind of a clean, flat kilter. I like it. It's a great set. It's also, $80 or a lot cheaper than the Volume S. And so if you're a bass head, I think you might be more satisfied with the P7 because the bass is better. It is more impactful. But there's something to be said about like the Volumes S, about the way it kind of presents sound. Like it's, to me, it's the better set. It sounds good. The Performer 7 has this thing, and I tried to talk about it in my review if you want to check that out, but it's almost like the treble is too crunchy or too crispy, or almost like glued on too much. And sometimes that works really well, and sometimes that, it just kind of doesn't. And that's just sort of a concern for me and for what I like. As we look at some other sets, like if we look at something like the Ziggett Odyssey, notice the Ziggett Odyssey has a little bit more bass, but again, there's sometimes, I guess my point I'm trying to make is that the Volume S sounds like a much more expensive set, where like a lot of these sets that, these are kind of the benchmarks of last year. Like the Odyssey is a really great set, and it's a really fun set, and it does a lot of things well. It kind of has that JM1 style tuning as well. But again, there's something about the kind of the treble roll off, or the upper mid treble air roll off, and just the detail and the way they did that passive radiator. It just sounds really nice, and it sounds like a really good set. The last one I compare this to is the Critical Dusk. Now, I like the Dusk. Like the bass impact's a little bit better, but the upper mids and like Twinkly and Sparklies feel a little bit untextured and just kind of a little bit flat. Like they're just going too much for a flat, and not enough kind of ripples and waves. So it's like, it's almost like sound should have a little bit more curvature and waves to that, as it's kind of a sound wave coming in. And I feel like coming from there, and even in the measurements, there should be less of a flat line and more curvature. And I think something like the Volume S gives some more contrasty things to it, and it sounds and feels great in ear. All right, so Softears Volume S, delightful set, a lot of fun, lacks dynamics, but it has really good mids and really good highs, and the detail and feeling of the micro details is all really strong. For me, it does need a little bit of bass, and so when I gave it a little bit of a bass tuck, like, you know, this bass score would increase, and even this imaging score would increase, as I feel like it's just not really there, and to a certain extent, the note weight as well. It's a solid set. You know, there's a lot of great things going on there, and it's nice to see a good set that from a company who knows how to tune, who's done some great sets in the past, that can put out something that's a lot cheaper. I dig it. I like it a lot. All right, the Softears Volume S. Is it the best thing in the world? No. But it's a nice set. It has good clarity, good micro details, good everything. It has good bass. Vocals sound good. They feel expressive and clean and clear. And just there's nothing hazy or weird about the IEM. I listen to it, I compare it to some other sets that I have on my desk, and it feels like a very clean, enjoyable tune of an IEM, and something that a lot of people are going to like. I love the upper mids on this, and it's a very great mid-focused centric set. Again, it does have some problems. Like, the one thing I would do is I would change the impedance dial so that it doesn't have that it doesn't have the high impedance dial, and that becomes something where the dynamic drivers would be a little bit more bassy, and have this be a different approach. A lot of people, especially a lot of Westerners, are sensitive to that 3K region, and so I feel like maybe this set was made for different audience than Americans. And if those are looking for American audiences and want to kind of go in that direction, it's something to consider if that's what you're trying to do. Thanks for watching my video. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them in the video notes below. And I hope that you guys have a great day. Bye-bye. You're still here. It's over. Go home. Oh, you're expecting a teaser for our next video. Well, we don't have that kind of money. What are you expecting? One of those store reviewers to show up in a saucy little leather number? Go. Oh, I can tell you one thing. We are going to have a collab video. We have no idea what it's going to be. Probably Kryn, maybe Chris. Or Joyce. Don't deny it. She's got range. Go. Get out of here. Go.
Go!
Go.
Go on with you!